everyone, welcome to the Texas ThC Doctor YouTube channel. My name is Emily, I'm helping run this channel, and today we are just going over a little bit of medical THC history. It dates as far back as 2700 BC. Yes, it is very exciting, the stuff we're going to be going over. I am sitting down with Dr. Shah today and we're going to be learning some new things. And yeah, tune in. We're here with Dr. Shah today.
Hey guys, good morning. It is morning.
Yeah, it's still morning. I'm sure when we post this it won't be though, so it's morning for us. But we are going to be going over history today of medical marijuana.
Yeah, I promised everybody last week or week before that I would go over a quick history of medical cannabis, and basically hopefully we learn something from this.
Exactly, and going over the things that we have chosen to research and stuff like that is actually very interesting to learn how far back medical marijuana goes. You would have no idea.
Yeah. So what we learned, and there was a journal in an article called a journal called Science Advances, and what that showed was genomic data that showed that the earliest domesticated forms of hemp or cannabis came from this basal form of cannabis that they found about 12,000 years ago.
And I have a picture of that right here. So this is kind of one of the earliest pictures, kind of how he described it in that basal form, kind of wilted. I don't know, it's like a drawing that we found. Very interesting.
And then around 2700 BC, there was a Chinese emperor. His name was Shen Nen. He was the first major leader of ancient world to officially prescribe marijuana in a tea form. And it would be used to treat things like gout, malaria, and even dementia. And as we know, dementia is now one of the diagnoses in Texas that has been approved, and actually in 2019, as one of the medications that you can be, one of the diagnoses you can actually treat for, which is pretty cool.
And it's crazy that it's kind of come full circle in that way, that it was used back then for dementia and now it's just came right back to being used for dementia again. And so here's the picture that we have, and I don't know if y'all can see or read this, but it says the oldest known written record on cannabis use comes from the Chinese emperor Shen Nan.
I think you did a better job than I did on that one. Well, yeah, so that's pretty cool. A little bit forward, around 2000 to 1400 BC in India, they still, to this day, they still use cannabis widely. It's used medicinally, it's used religiously and spiritually, and also recreationally. They mix it with milk, something called ghee, as well as some spices, and it's a drink called bang.
Which is interesting because we have that energy drink now. I'm sure it does the opposite effect, but
that's pretty strong too. It's spelled slightly different, but
yeah.
And this is actually a picture of like it says, a government authorized shop, because it's also closely tied with their religion too. The next thing we looked into was from there, around 1550 BC, ancient Egyptians were also widely using medical cannabis, and it was used to treat multiple ailments, including inflammation, which again, to this day, we know that CBD and THC is useful for that as well.
And here's the picture. So the picture that I have right up here is of a Egyptian goddess named Sheshat. She was a goddess of wisdom and knowledge, and now known as basically the goddess of cannabis, because in this picture you can see she has a little cannabis leaf right above her head, and the quote on that says, "The marijuana leaf is a part of her elevated state of consciousness as it floats above her head while still being connected to her." So it was basically kind of like a practice of elevated consciousness when they were using it, and yeah.
Awesome. So next we move along around 100 AD. There was a Chinese surgeon. His name was Hu Tua, and he was the first recorded physician to use cannabis as an anesthesia for surgery. That was pretty neat for me to learn about. So what he did, it was the plant itself was ground into a powder. It was mixed with wine, and then the patient would drink it before the surgery. and I think we have a picture of that as well.
Yeah, so we have that right here, him working on a patient. I think that's really interesting as well. Like, you wouldn't really think back then that they were using anesthetics for, I don't know anything about stuff like that, so I'm just like,
No,
wow.
it's actually, it is. It's not known for us to use anesthesia other than alcohol.
Yeah.
But, here using the combination of cannabis and this to perform actual surgery, that's pretty amazing. So we can see how widespread its use was, even back in 100 AD. And then we move along, so it spread westerly. It went into the Middle East. From the Middle East, it was used quite a bit in Arabic medicine, all the way up to 1000 AD. It was brought over to Europe, as well as to Africa, and it treated multiple ailments there as well. It was treated for multiple medical issues. Then around 1500s, the Spaniards brought it over to South America, and then it worked north to colonial America. And I think we have a picture of that as well.
So in this picture, they are harvesting cannabis, and that's very interesting because it just looks like any of the old farm pictures that you see of back then in America.
And from what I'm remembering and what I read, it was a very sustainable product because hemp grows really fast.
Well, we actually just visited one of the facilities that grows
Texas Original.
Yeah, Texas Original, and we actually got to see how quick it really grows, because I didn't know that a full plant could be grown in like 2 or 3, almost a month.
And then moving forward around 1700s to about the 1800s, there was a point where American journals were showing how hemp and the products from their roots can be used for multiple medical issues, such as like skin infections, inflammation, as well as incontinence.
So I have a page. So it says cannabis was listed in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1854 until 1941.
So that actually, the FDA was created because of things like opioids, morphine, were becoming an addiction problem in America. That's when the FDA was created to control that. So it was made to regulate all those different medicines, because even now we do use opium in some form or another for pain. So the FDA kind of got created for opiates, and then eventually marijuana was pulled into there as well. Also during this time, which added to the political nature of it, Mexican immigrants were entering the United States, and they introduced marijuana, but they also introduced it as something to smoke, which wasn't being done before. And then the smoking marijuana was something attributed to them, and it wasn't even called marijuana until the Mexican immigrants came over.
Yeah.
So now we just know it as marijuana, but before it was just called cannabis or hemp.
Yeah. Yeah, I just learned about that too, reading through all this, and I thought that was very interesting that it was like, it wasn't marijuana up until recently.
Yeah.
Where everything else in history, like before it was cannabis.
And then, it was also politicized during that time. They compared it to the immigrants being bad, and they related it to anything that comes from marijuana is a negative thing. So it was demonized at that point. And again, a lot of racial issues associated with that, and eventually it led to the Drug Use Act, which is also called the Harrison Act, which was officially declared the possession of marijuana a crime.
And I do have that right here, and it says the Harrison Narcotics Act of 1914 was a United States federal law which regulated and taxed the production and distribution of opiates and
coca products. So coca products being cocaine. And I know a very fun fact, a lot of people know this now, that cocaine was actually in Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
So, and it was, something that was just considered as an extra additive to it, which probably made it a little bit more fun to drink. Just joke. And then in 1937, about 23 states had then outlawed marijuana, and the government also passed the Marijuana Tax Act. making that the non-medical use of marijuana a crime.
Like the guy.
Yeah, so that poor guy that we have a picture of, he was the first guy to be arrested for that new law that was passed. I think his name was Samuel Caldwell. So he became famous for being the first person arrested based on for growing hemp and marijuana.
And he was actually, to, I guess, kind of put a microscope over his case, he was arrested for selling 2 joints, and he was given 4 years of hard labor.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Then what happened was in 1970, unfortunately marijuana was then characterized as a Schedule I medication. That kind of puts it in line with all of these other medications, other drugs such as heroin, cocaine, ecstasy, and LSD, which is crazy because you're comparing something like marijuana to all these really, really strong drugs. But that's what happened in 1970. And then as time went on in the 2000s, states started to legalize it. In 2015, about 23 states had legalized some form of medical cannabis. And then there were, certain medical qualifications that allowed you to get like a medical card, like in Colorado first. And I think we have this next green. The dark green, that's all the legalized places like California, Oregon, Nevada, and Washington, and Colorado. And then the New Mexico, which is like a darker of a green, also has medical cannabis is legal and it's decriminalized. So that's fantastic. And then Texas, lo and behold, is one of the places now that actually medical cannabis is legal, which is pretty neat. And then we have, the decriminalized states, which is light green, which is harder to see on that screen. I think Mississippi and Nebraska are part of that, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And then Louisiana, I think Louisiana actually is legal now, so this map might be a little old. I think it is medicinally legal in Louisiana, isn't it?
Yeah, I
think it is. So I think this map might be a little old because I think Louisiana it is legal now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. What we noticed was that cannabis started way long ago. I mean, millennia, and it spread from China westerly, and kind of just spread into the other continents as well from there. And initially, for thousands of years, it was only used for medicinal reasons. There was no fear of it being addictive or demonized in a way that it would cause us problems. I mean, honestly, alcohol was demonized a lot more, and it should be, because it causes a lot more problems than marijuana ever has. And I think a lot of people agree with that. There was a recent study in 2014. It showed that about 90% of people in California who were prescribed cannabis reported that it helped them treat some form of serious medical condition. That's 90%. So as a physician, I never hear 90% approval in any medication. Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. It's been around for some form of therapy for thousands of years. So I think that study is probably right on key, is 100% right.
Mm-hmm. And that 90% number, again, wow.
You don't see that anywhere else.
Yeah, you don't.
So the last slide, which shows that we're not, making this up, and that it does have a lot of benefits. We have good old Willie.
Yeah, we have Willie Nelson here because we have a quote right after this as well. Kind of him talking about how in the first line says, "It saved my life, really." And as it goes on, he says, he reflects, "I wouldn't have lived 85 years if I had kept drinking and smoking like I was when I was 30, 40 years old. I think that weed kept me from wanting to kill people, probably kept a lot of people from wanting to kill me. Too out there drunk, running around."
That's pretty amazing. So if anybody's seen Willie in concert, I've seen him a few times. He's pretty amazing, and he's still really awesome. He plays the guitar amazingly. He still can sing really well. His son helps him out. He sounds just like him too. If you've been to his concert, his son sounds just like him. It's pretty amazing. If you haven't, please see his concert. It's awesome. But that's it. That's our quick history, and hopefully 15 minutes or less that showed you the history from starting back in China, making its way west and spreading, being used medicinally for the longest time, and now again we're back at it. Hopefully we can here to stay this time. It was great seeing everybody. Please give us questions. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and like us. And remember that Texas THC Doctor is where you go to get legalized medical use of THC, and that's Texas spelled out, THC, and Doctor spelled out. Go to the website, it's really simple.
Thank you again for watching, and stay tuned for next week's video.
Bye guys.
Bye.